Hello, everybody. I am Louise Eddington, the Cosmic Owl of Cosmic Owl Astrology. And do we have a Taurus new moon for you? Coming up on Friday, May the 19th, 2023 at 11:53 a.m. Eastern. We're going to take a look at the new moon chart. We're going to take a look at the numbers. I have some positive vibes about this new moon, but that doesn't mean it's not without its challenges, especially for those that have planets or angles around the 28-degree mark of the fixed signs. And the fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Okay. So before we dive in to all the details, I have pulled a card as I always do. And I am pulling from, or I did pull from the Red Seeds Tarot, the Eleusinian Mysteries deck, which is associated with Demeter, the story of Demeter and Persephone, and the where Demeter went after she lost Persephone, she went to Eleusia to become a priestess of the Eleusinian Mysteries. So the card I pulled for this new moon is a challenging one as well. Okay, so it's 5 of Seeds. Look at this. And I think I take the cards that I pull sometimes as a warning. For those listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you choose to listen, this is a picture of 2 people, a man and a woman, with pomegranates hanging over their heads and looking very down and separate and a little bit like they've just had a fight. Okay. And so the words for this card in the deck that I use are, I am struggling. So you may find that you're struggling coming into this new moon because we are moving through some amazing times. I have lots of hope for what's coming, but that doesn't mean the change and the turmoil isn't a little bit difficult. A lot of people are going through some stuff. As I posted on my Facebook page yesterday talking about my own personal transits, I said gestures wildly. No wonder I'm going through some stuff with gestures wildly, all the things, because there's a lot going on. So I want to read you the quote for this card. You plant seeds every single day in the world and in others. With every thought you think and word you speak and action you take, you have influence. You are making a dent in the universe and you matter in a very real way. And that's from healingthebrave.com by Jennifer Williamson. And I'm going to read you the soul journey of this card. These cards are very different to the regular tarot, and I just feel called to them at the moment. So, sad and difficult times may have fallen upon us, or someone we know may be in despair and in need of care. This can be a challenging time which can deplete us physically and emotionally, leading to stress, depression, repressed anger. We all walk this path at times and can easily lose faith in everything and everyone around us. Approaching others for support and love can feel really difficult, as we may feel disconnected and isolated. Reaching out can be hard, but we can find ourselves again with the help of our friends, family, and counselors who will listen and see our struggles. These are people to whom we can talk to, which may help us understand the dynamics of our situation. These are people who have our backs for better or worse. They will stand at our side to show us we are not alone and that we matter. So the card's message overall, to my mind, is saying get help and support. So I'm going to show you the chart for the new moon, and I'm going to point out some things so that you can kind of put it into your own astrology chart to a degree, and then I'm going to take the chart away and talk about what it means, and then we're going to look at the numbers and of course the astrology, and then the symbols at the end. So the chart, let's have a look. Where's it gone? There it is. Okay, so this is the chart for the new moon. You can see it's happening on Friday, May the 19th, 2023. Incidentally, Taurus is a Venus guided sign. This is Venus home, and and this is on Venus Day. So this is a very important Venus new moon, not only because for several reasons. I'll talk about them in a minute. But Venus is turning retrograde in July, and I'm running my Venus retrograde class. You do not want to miss that. If you join in May, I'll put the link in the description. There's a 3-pay option if you need that. It starts July the 19th, 7 weeks, 8 calls. Okay. But there's several reasons why this is an important new moon related to the Venus cycle. So not just related to the fact that this is a new moon in one of Venus's signs. She is said to be the ruler of both Libra and Taurus. Okay. Excuse me. So why else is it important? So I'm going to talk a little bit about this as we go. But Venus had her first Venus star point, which is where the Sun and Venus meet every 9.5 months. She had her first Libra star point since the late 19th century. I think it was 1889 or 1879, the last one. My memory's gone. And that was at 29 Libra, where Haumea is now. And you can see this new moon is at 28 degrees and 25 minutes of Taurus. It's conjunct Sedna. I'll talk about what all that means. It's conjunct fixed star Algol, the demon star. I'll talk about what all that means. But it's in a quincunx to the Venus star point, which is a point of adjustment for things that began last October. Okay, in my opinion. And, you know, since October, we've also had Mars in a long out of bounds state from October to May the 5th of this year. It was October the 22nd, and a retrograde Mars in Gemini, a long journey. So we're harking back to those times. And look, the new moon is also in a sextile to Mars. Okay, so I'll talk about what all of this means. But I also want to talk about 28 Leo, which is the point of the Great American Eclipse of August 21st, 2017. That is in square to this new moon. And so we're getting a lot of activation of critical points that have happened over the last few years. Now, not only that, 28 Leo is also where Venus, remember we're in a Venus guided new moon, Venus will station retrograde on July the 22nd, 2023, which is the feast day of the Magdalene, said to be the birthday of Mary Magdalene and the birthday of those in her direct bloodline, in a square to this new moon. So it's got that eclipse on 2017 and where Venus will station retrograde this year. Okay, so mind blown already with what's happening. Now, if this is going over your head, just listen to the information after when I take the chart down. Don't focus too much on the detail. Just know that this is like a Venus activation over and over and over and over again. But it's also a Mars activation, which is meaning we're bringing together the divine feminine and divine masculine, for want of a better word, because that's the anima and animus within all of us. One other thing, it's a Venus, no, two. It's a Venus-guided new moon, and Venus is at 12 degrees of Cancer, and she is out of bounds. She's out of bounds until June the 4th, I believe. And she leaves just before she leaves Cancer, the sign of Cancer. And she is in an almost exact, by 2 minutes, conjunction with the triple moon goddess Hecate, who was the way shower, the lady of the lamp, the lady of the crossroads, the goddess of the crossroads, who helped Demeter to find her daughter, which could be said to be Venus Persephone. So Hecate is helping us to find our way into the underworld, to find our lost selves. And that's the journey we'll be following on the Venus retrograde class. So join us. We're also in an aspect to Neptune, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But one last thing I'm going to be talking about for this whole time is that on this new moon, we have a fixed grand cross. On the point of the full moon, sorry, new moon, not full moon, it's an out of sign fixed grand cross because Mars is just about to move into the sign of Leo. But I'm going to say this grand cross is really a point of tension on this new moon. Also, we can see the new moon is in an out of sign aspect, trine to Pluto, who's just gone retrograde and is heading back into Capricorn. And I mentioned she's in the new moon is in a sextile to Mars. So on first reflection, it didn't look that big a new moon. And then the more you look into the aspects and all those things, then you just go kapow. But I really think this is a new moon of real new beginnings. And we're starting to see the new beginnings as I record this on May the 10th. We're starting to see the glimmers of change. As I record this, we just had the Sun conjunct Uranus at 18 degrees 56 minutes of the sign of Taurus, the same sign as the new moon, which is a kind of shock, breakthroughs, awakenings. And on that very day, we had Donald Trump being held liable for defamation and sexual assault in the civil case brought against him by E. Jean Carroll. I have a big feeling that this is going to start bringing his downfall with these other cases coming up. And to talk about quickly why his ascendant is at 29 Leo and his Mars is at 28 Leo. So he's directly impacted by all these energies that are coming up to these end degrees of signs and by this new moon on May the 19th. But I'm not going to stick with him. We've got better things to talk about. So numbers. It's a 28-degree new moon, which is 2 plus 8, which makes a 1, which makes 10, which makes a 1. New beginnings. New moon, new beginnings. But it's also made of the 2 and the 8. And the 2 represents often the divine feminine in numerology. And 8 represents equal balance, infinity, strength, and courage. And it's in an earth or feminine or yin Venus ruled sign. The divine feminine is rising up, and in other ways I'll talk about the other parts in a minute when I finish with the numbers. So we're also in a 5 months, which is a number of change, in a 7 year, which is kind of a tower cardy number, the 7. It's often, new spiritual beginnings from a collapse. Things often collapse before things come new. And we can see this happening all around us. But we're on a 1 day, 19th. 1 plus 9 is 10 equals a 1. So new beginnings again. But on the 1 and the 9, with the 19, we've got new beginnings and endings, because there's always endings to have new beginnings. So it's a breakthrough new moon, new starts, new things coming. And I think you'll enjoy the symbols when we get to that at the end. So that's the numbers. I guess that makes 7, 12, and 10, 27. All overall, I think it's I should have added this up before I came in. Let me just do a quick bit of mental math. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 16, 17, and 5, 23. Oh, it's a 23-day, a 5-day. Lots and lots of change coming. Big endings and beginnings. And if we go back to the astrology chart itself, we've got all these pile up of energies right at those very last critical degrees. Some of them the anaretic degrees, the very last degree, and then we've got some at 0 degree. Okay. All right. So what else to talk about numbers wise? I'm not going to go into all the numbers. Just know that this is a very powerful new moon. Things are going to end for some people and new beginnings for many of us. And I think they're positive new beginnings for kind of sustainability, solidity, all those kind of things. So let's go to the new moon itself. As I said, it's a Taurus new moon. And I'll talk about all the aspects in a minute. But let's talk about Taurus first of all. We've been kind of learning to be more Taurus for almost 19 months now, while the North Node has been moving through the sign of Taurus, and all the eclipses were in the signs of Taurus and Scorpio. We've been yearning to get more grounded, more solid, more reliable ways of living, to get more connected with the earth, to get more sensual. So this Taurus new moon is really about, if you think about a new moon, we're in the no moon phase. We're in the dark phase. So we're in that really inner phase of planting the seeds, but, you know, nurturing them, moistening the soil a little bit, setting new intentions. But this is very much about getting grounded, getting centered, weathering the storms. I always think of Taurus as like the really strong tree trunk that's very well rooted into the earth. It can bend and sway a little bit. There's some Taurus are not very movable, but at its highest level. But generally it's rooted in very strong values. It's very rooted in its abundance, what it has. It enjoys what it has. Taurus, it's often called a materialistic sign. I don't find Taurus to be kind of materialistic in the way of kind of like ostentatiousness. Taurus just likes good things. It loves what it has. It loves its belongings, loves its home, loves its comforts, loves its food. Taurus is a very grounded and centered sign at its best. So yeah. Of course, you know, Taurus is ruled by the bull. So, you know, if you wave your red cloth in front of it, put red rags in front of it, and you can get the horns pointed at you. But we're going to be working with the highest quality of Taurus on this new moon, right? Okay. So peace, loyalty, patience are all Taurus kind of energies. Okay, they're not very overly dramatic. They don't like emotional drama. I know that, having a Taurus mother, and I'm kind of a bit of up and down emotional kind of person. But so Taurus are calm, comfortable, sensual. I mentioned that before. Easygoing, can be stubborn, but they're stable, practical. and like security. They're self-indulgent because they like to indulge their senses. They can be a little bit greedy, but I don't really always find them that much greedy. They're just like what they've got. Very deliberate, very determined, very persevering. But it's also a creative sign. They're quite artistic, Taurus, musical, and really just earthy, nature-loving, very fertile. So think of all those energies. Think on this new moon of really getting out there and spending some time in nature, or cooking good food, nurturing your body. That's very Taurus energy too. Think about giving yourself maybe a massage on the Taurus new moon, or going for a massage rather, or going out and hugging trees, sitting next to them, literally talking to trees, getting out in your garden, doing some planting if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. You get the idea. Just really get connected to your senses and the material world on this new moon. Okay, so that's Taurus energy. So we've got a feel of what this Taurus new moon is about. Now the aspects that make it extra special. Well, first of all, this is a new moon that is conjunct Sedna. Sedna is the Inuit goddess of the oceans. She's got quite a tragic story. Alan Clay of dwarfplanetastrology.com says that her symbolism in astrology, he's written a whole book on her, is spiritual destiny through crisis. And it's quite clear that we are in our humanity, politically and personally, at a crisis point, which literally means crossroads. We're moving into a new astrological age slowly. Sedna has an 11,408-year orbit and was last at this spot at the end of the Great Ice Ages, when people took to the land and became arable, farmers, and started growing crops and literally planting seeds. So you can see this, she's associated with big shifts in humanity and the way we live and on the earth. So this is a new moon conjunct her. She's very associated with climate change, particularly with matters of the ocean, because she is goddess of the ocean. So we might hear a lot about the oceans coming into this new moon. All right. And it's kind of a bit earth movie, this new moon as well. So, look out for storms, but we're not going to go there as well. Now, sticking with what's conjunct next to this new moon, we also have Demon Star Algol. Now, Demon Star Algol has, traditionally got such a bad rap. Okay, she's said to be the most unfortunate, violent and dangerous star in the heavens. She is said to be one of the most unfortunate and associated with death by decapitation, and has a strong association with violence across a wide variety of cultures. However, and I'm not saying it can't be any of those things, all right? I can say that because of the association with poor Medusa, it's very much been kind of associated with the divine feminine being bad. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a take on this, because we often feel these things coming, and we've just had the Jean Carroll taking on Donald Trump. And, Algol kind of has this really taking your power back kind of energy, all right? She, Medusa rebirthed herself, and she held onto her power, even as a decapitated head, all right, because she was slain by Perseus and given to Pallas Athena to put her head on her shield, and that's the wise owl. So she embodies the monster, but also the oracle and the incredible power of taking your power back. And to think in terms of archetypal stories, E. Jean Carroll said it's not about the money, it's about getting my life back. And that's very Algol to my mind as well, if we look at the deeper energy of her, rather than just this archaic vision of her as decapitating. You know, maybe E. Jean Carroll will have literally decapitated Trump's power, you know. But Medusa became a powerful weapon in battle by having her head chopped off. So, and if you were standing behind her, you were protected. And if you were standing in front of her, you would be cast to stone. So this new moon has Algol right with it in that dark no moon phase. So imagine Medusa kind of protecting you and you taking your power back and becoming a powerful symbol of magical power, magic, transformation, and feminine power. And the snake, her hair snakes, okay, you know, that's a symbol of transformation. But snakes ward off evil also, and snakes enhance psychic abilities too. So, you know, there's a lot to do with all this female, feminine, divine feminine in every one of us, empowerment with Algol as well. So, of course, in the patriarchal world, Algol's had a very bad rap, but I think we can kind of embody the inner monster, which has been squashed for so long, and coming to transformation through tragedy. Okay, so we can look upon it as part of, as a symbol of transformation, magic, protection, and power. So now I want to look at some of the other aspects. That's the conjunction. You could look at Sedna actually and Medusa as having a very similar kind of energy, because Sedna in her tragic story actually had her fingers chopped off by her dad in a storm so that she would not pull the boat over when they were escaping from her disastrous, awful marriage. And her own father literally kind of chopped her fingers off to save himself. And then she drowned, and then she became the goddess of the oceans. So we literally had heads chopped off, hands chopped off. And that means getting right into your core, into your root. Does that make sense? It does to me. So it's about really getting embodied on this new moon. Okay, so I'm going to mention the sextile to Neptune first of all. Neptune's been in Pisces forever and a day. And this this new moon is in a sextile to Neptune, adding in this this creative and spiritual connection with the divine into the mix of this new moon, especially in the dark of the new moon. This is about getting in touch with your inner embodied knowing. If we mix Neptune in Pisces, which is the ocean of unknowing, the ocean of consciousness, and bringing it into Taurus, into stable embodied energy. Then we also have a sextile to Mars in Cancer. So the new moon is actually at the midpoint of Neptune and Mars, who are in a trine to each other. And Mars is said to be in his detriment in the sign of Cancer. Cancer is another water sign. So it's about getting in touch with your emotions and what you need to provide yourself with emotional security and safety, and with your family. But Mars has just been at what I just saw described at this morning as his most irritable degree. So Mars is said to be, well, the word is escaping me. I've just had a diagnosis of ADHD, by the way, so this explains when this happens. But Mars best degree, let's call it that, is 28 Capricorn, and the opposite degree, 28 Cancer, is his most uncomfortable degree. So Mars has been on that long journey where he's been way out of bounds, acting out of character, then retrograde in Gemini, and now he's still a little bit irritable. He doesn't love being in Cancer, and the new moon is aspecting Mars. And I've said all along, right through this long Mars journey, he keeps being told to cool his jets. Now, talking about the astrological representation of Mars, you know, cookbooks and things just go, it's the planet of war, it's the planet of aggression, it's the planet of anger. Well, Mars originally, if we're looking in the gods, the hierarchy of the gods, was the god of agriculture. He's a guardian, he's a protector. And in Cancer, he's learning how to protect the family. He finds it a little bit irritable to be having to cool his jets a little bit. So he's a little bit irritated. So there may be some people who are very emotionally triggered in the dark of this new moon. But he's about to go into Leo after this new moon, which is going to have him more fired up to kind of be the benevolent leader kind of energy at his highest again. So that's one of the aspects to it. Now also an out of sign trine to the planet Pluto at 0 Aquarius is on this new moon. Endings, beginnings. Pluto is going to be moving back into Capricorn shortly after this new moon, and is going to, you know, this is taking us into the profound depths of transformation yet again. Are you getting kind of a theme here? You know, it's in that dark moon, in a no moon phase. This is a time to go and get in your body, do some somatic work even, you know, really go and talk to nature, get out in nature, get embodied, feel your body, feel the knowing inside, and plant the seeds from that knowing in the dark of the moon, and find that inner magic and deep inner transformation. It's a very deeply yin new moon in so many ways. Now, I did mention that it's in a quincunx to Haumea, and that is rebirth too. Haumea is pure creation, dwarf planet, and she is retrograded back into Libra to rebalance and rebirth our relationships, put it quite simply. Now, there's one thing I did not mention that I'm going to, is the galactic center. All these pile up of planets at the galactic center at 27 Sagittarius. This new moon is in a quincunx to the galactic center, which is in a sextile to Haumea, the creation, and that is a finger of fate or finger of God pointing right at this new moon, conjunct Algol and conjunct Sedna. And do you know what that's saying to me? With the finger of God or fate pointing right at the new moon, is that our future is here on this earth and in these human suits, in our embodiment, and about not ascending to some mythical cloudy heaven with a God that kind of goes, you know, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. It's about embodying our pure humanness and connection with nature and each other, and sustain and building a more sustainable future. And we've got a whole of the cosmos, if you like, pointing at this new moon, saying, you better do this, you better get embodied, humans, and each one do your part. Quite powerful. Now, just though quickly to talk about the Grand Cross that I talked about when I looked at the chart. This could be, you know, there could be some discord and quite challenging anger and aggression welling up in some people on this new moon. Because remember, people are kind of in a no moon phase, so it's like you feel a bit lost in the dark of the new moon. Mars and Pluto facing off to each other and square the nodes. There could be some event around the new moon that's going to really change the trajectory of where we are all going collectively and individually. That could be quite shocking. You know, Mars opposing Pluto does have the potential to be rather aggressive and violent. However, I live with a Mars-Pluto square in my chart. It's not always that. Sometimes it's about facing into your deepest fears and your deepest inner power and mining those inner diamonds as well. So don't necessarily think it's going to have to show up that way. There could be something that just really causes us all to really look deep and say, we have to change. Something has to shift. So may it be so, because we need to shift badly. Now, just one other thing while we stay on the astrological map of this new moon is this Venus Hecate conjunction. This is at 12 degrees of Cancer, right on the sun of the USA. So the USA is getting hit by many transits at the moment. I'm not going to go through everyone, but this one, Venus is the ruler of the new moon. Venus is there with Hecate, the triple goddess, showing us the way. So yet again, I think something big is going to happen concerning the USA. However, 1 + 2 is the divine masculine, the divine feminine, and 3 is creating. It's one of the most creative numbers. It's one in the sequence of 369, the Nikola Tesla code, that he said if we could understand 369 code, we'd understand the universe. But 3 is a really lovely, rounded, creative number. And when it's made of 1 and 2, this is coming together. There's a lot of coming together in this new moon of relationships and of bringing everybody together. Okay. I think, have I done everything else? Oh, I did mention at the start, but I'm just going to talk about it a little bit more. Yeah, so this new moon is in an almost exact square to the point where Venus will station retrograde on the Feast of the Magdalene on July 22nd at 28 Leo. I don't think there could be a greater sign that the divine feminine is rising and taking back her power. The new moon conjunct Algol, conjunct Sedna. It's where the divine feminine has been harmed and been hurt. And we've been seeing more of that lately with all these abortion bans and so on. But at a spiritual level, it's in all of us again. I think she's rising up and taking back her power this year. Things are going to change. Yay. So I hope you'll join me on my Venus retrograde class. I'm going to put the details in the description, but just know that this is quite the powerful new moon. And this retrograde this summer is going to be off the charts for a variety of reasons that I cannot go into here. I will be doing a preview call at some point, but probably won't fit it in by the end of May because I've got so much going on. And there is a 3-pay option during May. In June, there'll be a 2-pay option. And then in July, it's just 1 pay. So if you need a payment option or you just think, I've just got to do this, the link's in the description below. Okay, so the symbols. So I'm going to look at the Sabian symbol first. Now, the Sabian symbol for this new moon is 2 cobblers working at a table. And I mentioned that, you know, this is a lot about coming together embodiment. It's also about that practical earth-based skill. You can't think of anything more rooted than cobblers making shoes and putting soles on shoes so that people are connected to the earth. Okay, but also building something lasting. Okay, but the interpretation of two cobblers working at a table is capability. And it says to optimize our own achievements and joy, we need the wisdom of others. So at one level of interpretation, two old men are puttering away their lives on tasks that lack personal meaning or life satisfaction. I don't know why you'd say that. Maybe people enjoy making shoes, actually. So I'm going to ignore that. But this is saying about integrity. The artisan and workman have a unique and highly respected quality of integrity that is derived by their simple and absolute commitment to performing skillfully the task at hand. This is done by balancing the pros and cons accurately for each of the many aspects of the job, and so on and so forth. We need the wisdom of others, and we need to work together to harness the real value of work and labor and making something very sustainable. So, you know, I think this is about getting back to the yard work, getting back to planting, getting back to making things. I'm not saying you have to do all of the things, but getting back to that way of being connected, to maybe take up weaving or spinning or sewing. I had a strong urge this morning. I was suddenly like, I'm going to take up cross stitch again. I used to love cross stitch when I was younger, and I want to do something in the evenings that distracts this ADHD brain of mine. So is that a message from spirit saying, yes, do it? Anyway. So the Chandra symbol for Taurus 29, a man amuses himself by drawing strange shapes, crystallized imagination, the inside of the inside, remembered and evoked whimsically. There is no form, no pattern, no binding reality, dreaming the world into being from a greatly bemused stance, other. Twinkling observer witness consciousness, off on tangents that call, a life, a cycle, a realm set aside for inventive play without boundaries. You feel exultant in the freedom, swept away beautifully, answerable to nobody and nothing except the muse. Wow. So I've said that Taurus is a very creative sign. So think into this new moon and what do you want to create? Think into that, drawing strange shapes and crystallizing your imagination, and then put it into reality, the muse. So I think that's it for the full moon, new moon. I keep saying full moon. I really appreciate you guys, and I would appreciate any thumbs ups, any comments, any subscriptions if you're not subscribed to my channel already. All helps the YouTube algorithm. And I'll be watching the comments and things from my vacation. I'll be actually away on this new moon, but I'll have my trusty cell phone with me, watching your comments and likes and subscribes, and chatting with you as and where I can. So from me, from the Cosmic Owl, it's much love, and have a very grounded and sustainable, embodied new moon. So much love.